Hi, everybody.
Right.
It's great to see everybody. It's always nice to see cat lovers. Well, you guys are my favorite people in the whole world. I just love every one of you. Um, my name's Tom Kirby, and I'm certified in applied animal behavior. I choose to focus on cats just because I love cats. And the reason why, pardon me, the reason why I chose cats is because, they're basically still wild animals. They're little pieces of nature that are in our homes, that unlike dogs have been bred for very particular behaviors for 10,000 years. And their behaviors occupy fairly narrow lanes from breed to breed. And cats just have never been bred for behaviors. They still have all of their wild instincts are intact. And if you were to examine their DNA, you would find that the cats in your homes are, virtually identical to African wildcats in terms of the species and their genetic makeup. The only real difference between a wild cat and a so-called domesticated cat is that the domesticated cat has a slightly smaller forebrain. And we sort of hypothesize that that's because they have fewer problems to solve. Cats that live in our homes aren't quite as challenged as a cat that lives in the wild, and so over the hundreds and thousands of years that they have been associated with us, their forebrains have gotten slightly smaller. Now, that doesn't mean they're not great problem solvers, because I got to tell you, I think they're some of the best problem solvers that there are. I have been outwitted by many cats in my time. So, they're smarter than me in some cases. But what we wanted to talk about tonight, I just want to first thank Stephanie and the Friends of the Animal Center Foundation for inviting me to come talk to you guys tonight, because we're really in a lot of trouble in this country in terms of cats, and we're getting better, but we still have some problems. I wanted to share some information with you here before we get deep into this. There was a study, and as luck would have it, the study was published on the 9th of January of this year, brand new study about when and why cats are returned to shelters. And the study discovered that every year in the United States, an estimated 3.2 million cats enter shelters, and about 66% of those are adopted. Now, if you do the quick math, that leaves over 1 million that are unadopted. Now, of that 66% that are adopted, though, some of them come back. In the study, 11.7% of adopted cats were returned. And that's really the focus tonight of what I wanted to talk to you about, is sort of the big problems, the reasons why cats get returned, and what can be done about those big problems, the way we can address some of those things so that fewer cats get returned. Because it's hard enough to adopt a cat out. Boy, it's really tragic when that cat comes back. When you've put all the time and effort and resources and got the adoption completed, and then the cat is in a loving home, and then for some reason that cat comes back. Now, according to this study, they came up with 11 reasons. I have more than 11, just because they lumped all behavioral reasons they lumped together as one thing called behavior. And as we all know, that's a fairly intricate set of things end up under that category. They said 25.56% were returned for behavioral reasons. And that's probably right. So on my list, and these are just things that I've come up with from the time that I've spent working with rescues and clinics, and I've worked with quite a few across the country over the years. I've come up with 15 things. Of those, about half of them are behavioral, and those are the things we'll really talk about tonight. I'm just going to hit on the first 8 because those are things that aren't under my purview. In fact, I just want to make it really clear, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not qualified to give medical advice. And so it's really important that the first step for any behavioral issue that you were to encounter with your pets, the very first step is to visit a qualified veterinarian, because you may or may not be surprised that in a lot of cases, the reason why the cat is acting out is because of some health problem. And so the sooner you can get to the bottom of that, the better. Now, unfortunately, we have sort of trained our veterinarians in this country to not dig into problems, because digging in means doing lots of tests, and lots of tests cost lots of money. And so we have basically trained our veterinarians to do the simplest thing, to treat the clinical signs instead of digging in to find what the cause of the ailment is. So, for example, if you bring your cat to the veterinarian and they're itching, in a lot of cases, a veterinarian will give them a steroid shot. But that doesn't really get to the reason why they're itching. It just stops them itching long enough so that you don't complain and it doesn't cost you a lot of money. And so in a lot of cases, it's up to you to really dig in with your vet and tell your vet, that I understand that these tests could come back negative. A test that is returned with a negative result is just as informative as a test that comes back with a positive result. But we have this idea that if the vet suggested something, it comes back with a negative result, well, they're just stealing our money, right? And we've got to kind of get over that as a culture. We've got to understand that we sometimes need our veterinarians to dig into things, and it's up to us now to tell them that we're willing to do that. So the things that aren't under my purview, the first 8 reasons for surrenders are on this list. Personal problems, which are, that's a huge umbrella of things where people have, maybe relationship issues, or all sorts of things fall under that category. Number 2, money. And that's especially significant if you have a cat who is ill and requires medical treatment. That can really, the cost can mount up very rapidly. Even just feeding a cat. I mean, you all know this last couple of years, cat food has gone crazy. Like I think I'm spending twice as much on feeding my cats as I was, before the pandemic. So that can be a real significant burden on people. It's important. And I know that the Friends have offer a sort of I don't know what you call it, like a gosh, my vocabulary just escaped me. But
talking about us.
Yeah, that you
Yes.
offer food for
Yes.
people.
Yep, the shelter does food bank, and then
Food
we
bank, that was
also
the word.
we gave money to the actual human food banks for cat and dog food as well.
Yeah, and see that really helps. That goes a long way to sort of solving that issue. The number 3 issue is cat allergies. That is not so easily solved. There is a new Purina product that claims to help with that. I have actually tested that product and worked with sort of analyzing what that product does. And I have a video on my YouTube channel about it if you're curious, but it has limited efficacy and it might be effective in certain situations. Number 4 is landlord issues, because we have another problem in this country, and that is that a lot of landlords just make it a lot easier on themselves to say no pets. No pets are allowed. And I don't know, I haven't seen very many advocacy groups here in the United States, but there are a few. There is one in the UK as well that does advocacy for tenants. And that's just a really tough issue. And we need to get more landlords on board with the idea that very few cats are going to destroy an apartment. Number 5, lost without an ID chip or strays. Number 6, new baby. You'd be surprised how many people have a new child come into their lives. They decide they need to get rid of their cat. And that just kind of comes down to misinformation. There is a fact that pregnant women should not handle cat feces. That, the toxoplasmosis is a real issue, but it's pretty easily solved, by either wearing gloves or having someone else handle the cat litter duties. Um, it's not a widespread issue, but some people will make a mountain out of a molehill. And for some, if they truly believe that it's a problem, then they're probably not going to treat their cat especially well. So maybe it's better that they do surrender them. Number 7 is they get a new partner who dislikes cats. And that's another really tragic issue. And I'm hoping that, we'll see less of that coming up. Then number 8 is cat pregnancy. The cat gets pregnant because they weren't spayed and then, they suddenly feel like they have to get rid of the cat and the kittens all at once. And hopefully they don't dump them somewhere, because that's a real awful issue. I believe that it has to be easy for people to surrender cats for that very reason, because if we lay a guilt trip on them, if they really do need to surrender them, then all they're going to do is dump them somewhere, and then the cat has a much lower chance of survival. So those are the first 8. None of those have anything to do with behavior, so that we're going to leave those here. And I'm going to go on through 9 through 15 now. A lot of you very generously asked a lot of questions, a lot of questions, like 60 plus questions. And I would really love to answer every one of your questions individually. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time for that. So what I'm going to do as I go through these remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories, you'll find that a lot of the things that you were asking questions about are going to be covered by these particular categories. And then at the end, after I'm done going through this, then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the questions and try to pull things out that I didn't cover in this section. So number 9 is the ever popular peeing and pooping outside the litter box. And we had lots of questions about that. So I started with that because that is probably the most complicated issue that you will ever face with your cat. If your cat is going outside the litter box, it really takes detective work to sort it out. There's never a really simple answer. I have a friend whose cat, she actually had her mother contact me, and the cat was going outside the litter box because the cat was in physical pain because she had arthritis and she couldn't climb into the box. So she would make it to the edge of the box, and then she would go because she knew she wanted to go in the box, but she couldn't get in. So she would go outside the box and leave, and it was consistently outside the box. And unfortunately, they had their litter box in the basement at the bottom of a flight of stairs. So this poor cat was just wearing herself out getting to the bottom of the stairs. And by the time she got down there, she was in so much pain that she just couldn't get into the litter box. And it was not only distressing her family, it was distressing the cat, because no cat really wants to go outside the litter box. What you find in most situations with most of the clients that I work with, going outside the litter box is directly related to security issues if it's not a health or pain problem. It usually has to do with the cat feeling insecure in the home, feeling threatened. And that, what causes that really depends on the cat. Like, if in some cases it can be community cats outside spraying outside the house, and that can feel like a threat to your cat. Your cat can smell it even though you can't smell it. So you can go outside with a black light flashlight and see if you can find spray around the outside of the house. And if you do find it, you can clean it with an enzymatic cleaner, and that will help. In other cases, it's someone in the home is treating the cat poorly. And by poorly, I don't mean necessarily like any kind of extreme abuse, but it's really important that cats never receive punishment. Punishment doesn't ever work with cats. It hardly ever works with humans. The only time it ever works with humans is if the punisher is staring at us, or we internalize the punisher in some way in our heads. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. The example I use in my consults is when you're driving and you're speeding and you pass a cop car, you slow down for a minute till you're sure they're not following you. And then you pretty much pick up speed again, because seeing the police officer doesn't change your desire to get where you're going faster. So, it's really important that you not ever punish a cat. Everything that you want to change in a cat's behavior has to be done through positive reinforcement. And I firmly believe that everything that you want to change in any cat's behavior can be changed using positive reinforcement. I'll follow up on this a little bit more in depth later, but using positive reinforcement to change something, it does take a little bit of extra creative thought. I mean, it's a lot harder to do than saying no, but saying no, all it does is hurt your cat's feelings. All it does is make them feel threatened by you. It can really damage your relationship with your cat. So, why do something that makes you feel bad? It makes them feel bad when you can do something, that's constructive, that makes everybody feel good in the long term. So with peeing and pooping, part of the issue is security. And it's a long list of sort of recommendations that I usually have to beef up a cat's security. Foremost on the list, though, is giving them choice in their lives, giving them agency over their own lives, where you don't forcibly try to make them do anything. Because who wants that? I mean, you don't want people telling you what to do, right? I mean, no cat wants it either. And so the best thing that you can do is to offer your cat choices everywhere where you can safely do so. And I mean things like, you can approach your cat to pet them like this, and that's really scary. Now they get used to this coming at their head like this because they learn that they can trust you. And over time, this becomes less threatening. But if you had a new cat that didn't know you very well and you come at their head like this looks like a claw. This is like a cat with their claws extended coming to attack. But you can offer them the knuckles of your hand, let them come that last couple of inches and tell you, yes, I'd like to be petted. Yes, I'd like to be petted. Here's where I'd like to be petted. And they'll move their head where they want you to pet them. And that's just giving them a choice in the matter. It's not treating them like a second-class citizen. It's like, what do you want to do? And if you offer your hand and they turn away or they do something else, then that's okay. They've made their choice, and allowing them to make that choice is huge. It makes such a huge difference in their lives. The same thing goes with like all of the resources that they have access to give them choices is really important. So like in this case where we're talking about litter boxes, I've had people that like to put all the litter boxes together side by side. Maybe they read that you need one more litter box than cats, because you see that in a lot of the literature. But what happens is that literature doesn't explain why. Nobody ever tells you why should you have one more than cats? Because it doesn't really make sense if you think about it. If you have 2 cats and 2 litter boxes, there'll always be a litter box open, right? But the difference is if you have 2 cats and 3 litter boxes, there's always a choice. The first cat can be in litter box A, and then the second cat still has 2 litter boxes to choose from. That's why you want one more than there are cats. And so choice, if you start looking at their world from the point of view of choice, then that will help you to make them feel more secure overall. And you would be surprised at how many of these peeing and pooping incidents are actually associated with a variety of different things that you start chipping away. It's like a brick wall. You start, okay, I'm going to offer them choice for when, they go to the litter box. Here's 1 brick. I'm going to take this brick down. Now I'm going to offer them choice when they get petted. That's another brick. And it's a lot of little things like that add up to a lower stress level. Because what's happening when a cat goes outside the litter box, they are expressing a need that they feel that their territory isn't their own. They don't feel safe or secure. So if they pee outside the litter box, they're letting their smell fill the space so that they feel better. They feel more like this is my territory now. And if they poop outside the litter box, we refer to that as middening. Whenever they midden, they are in extreme distress. That is a huge red flag that they are extremely upset, and either they have a health problem or they have, you know, an extremely stressful situation that needs to be addressed. And that's when you start to put on the Sherlock Holmes gear and you start looking into it and paying close attention to how everyone in the household is treating them, because a big part of this is consistency. Like everybody in the household, you never know. Sometimes someone in the household might be pulling the cat's tail and teasing the cat when they shouldn't be. So you just have to pay close attention and make sure that everyone is on the same page. Other than that, it really takes concerted effort and close attention to sort of discern that. If we have time, I'll circle back around to more of those incidents for peeing and pooping outside the box, because it is such a big deal. And it is such a major reason why people send cats back, you know, that they've adopted. Spraying is my next item, and that really falls into the same category, but is really, I listed it separately for one reason, and that is because spraying can often be done for the same reasons, the same territorial reasons, but spraying is also, you know, it often has to do with botched neuter jobs. And so it's really important that a cat who is spraying get a thorough exam from a qualified veterinarian, because that is more than behavior. Spraying a cat who has been, you know, spayed or neutered properly should never really spray. It's rare that they do. And if they're properly spayed and neutered, spraying just indicates, it puts it in the category of peeing and pooping outside the box, as opposed to a separate sort of line item. The next item I have is fighting between cats. This often happens because people don't introduce their cats properly. A lot of times people will bring in a new cat and just put them together, you know, or they'll have read something online that says keep them separated for a week and then maybe put a screen door between them so they can see each other. You read that a lot. What really needs to happen is they need to be introduced very gradually in a very methodical manner. So the first step that you read about online is actually correct. You do want to put them on opposite sides of a door, have each one in their own territories, and then you feed them on opposite sides of the door so that they can experience the smell of one another while they're enjoying a delicious meal. Because I don't know about you, but when I eat my favorite food, I feel better, right? So whenever a cat is eating their favorite food, they feel better. That changes their emotional base. And so if you can feed them on opposite sides of a door for a week or so, and both cats, they know there's another cat on the other side of the door, and they know that they can smell them, they can hear them, they can look under the door, they can see movement. Some cats won't let you feed them right up close to the door, so you have to kind of back the bowls away and sort of slowly over that course of time, kind of move them closer, closer, closer. But the idea is to give them a very safe way of experiencing the smell of the other cat so that they associate positive things with it. I mean, everybody has heard of Pavlov's dogs, right? That's classical conditioning. And that's what we're doing, is classical conditioning. We're associating a delicious meal with the smell of this new cat or cats, for both for the newcomer and for any cats that might already be in the household. So after that week or so that takes place, the next step is to basically sit in the doorway. You become the door, okay? And you basically, what I advise people to do is to offer treats to each side of you. I like those tube treats. I don't know if you're familiar. Hang on. These liquid tube treats, and I'm not endorsing this brand. It's just what I happen to have. Are these, it's a liquid inside this foil tube, and you tear off a corner and you squeeze out a little bit out of the end, and cats go crazy for it. And there are a lot of different brands of this. You can pick any of them, whatever your cat likes. But this whole tube, this pouch full of goodies, doesn't represent a lot of calories, but it represents a lot of positive moments. You know, to offer a cat this, let them lick a little off the end of it, then you take it back. Now they can look at it. They see that it's in your hand, and you've got a cat on each side of you, and you're giving them both treats like this, and they're having a positive experience. The other cat is there. They can see them. Everybody's here. Nobody's in competition. Everybody's getting treats, and it's all positive. And if they start to stare, or one of the early warning signs of stress is lip licking or stretching, you know, kind of stretching out, you know, will tell you that they're starting to feel a little stressed, or they start staring at each other, the tail thrashing around. If any of those signs start to happen, then you just close the door, calmly close the door, go on about your business, say, okay, we're done for the night. We'll do it again tomorrow, and do it the same time every day, so that they begin to anticipate, now it's treat time. We're ready for treat time. And they'll start, you know, gathering around the door and getting ready for it, because it'll become like a high point in their day. And you start out doing this for just a couple of minutes, and you slowly build time, more time, more time, more time. And if you can get up to around 15 or 20 minutes sitting in the door with your cats on each side of you, and they're not attacking one another, and they're not staring at one another or feeling stress, and maybe they lounge and sort of relax, you're ready for the next stage. And the next stage is to let them occupy a large room in your home together. But we're going to start over with just a few minutes at a time. And we're going to put some boxes on the floor, a lot of boxes, at least twice as many boxes as there are cats. And what we're going to do is we're going to invite the cats into the room, and we're going to give them treats and toys. We're going to have fun time. We're going to explore the boxes. And the reason why I always recommend the boxes is because you can, if you bring both cats into a room, they're going to feel like they need to own that entire room as their territory. Each cat now feels like they're in competition for that room. But if you put boxes around, each cat can own a box. And now I'm in my box, and that's my territory. And having each one in a separate box, and having twice as many boxes as there are cats, allows them to move, relocate between boxes. There's always some other choices to make, and they can all really enjoy being in the room together. And then, you know, you let that go for 3 to 5 minutes, take one of the cats back into their area, leave the other cat there, and you're done for the day. And you start doing that again, a little bit longer each day, a little bit longer each day, until at some point, what usually happens is that you forget about them. They're in there together, and maybe the phone rings, or you've got something in the oven, or something happens that you're distracted, and suddenly you realize it's been several hours and they've been in the room together for that whole time, and then they're okay. It's also really important while they're interacting that there's a model that I like to use, and I've yet to come up with another word for it, but I call it being the constable. It's really important when you're dealing with cats to really approach them like, not as a police officer. You're not trying to catch someone doing something wrong and I'm going to get you, I'm going to punish you. It's more being a constable. And a village constable back in the day was someone that pretty much had a lifelong position, where what they did is they paid close attention to everyone, what everyone was up to. And they would try to anticipate if someone was on the road to trouble, and they would try to head them off before they got into trouble. So they might even notice when, you know, kids growing up, they're like, oh, that's one to watch. You know, that's one that might get into trouble later. And I'm going to keep an eye on them and try to keep them from getting into trouble, as opposed to just waiting around the corner and watching and waiting for them to do it. And then I'm going to get you, you know. And that's the way you have to be with the cats, is be real calm and cool. Be cool about it. And like, if you see two cats sort of starting to eye up one another and stare at each other, just happen to get in the way. Oh, I just happen to be walking over here to pick up the remote control, you know, like I'm just going over across the room. You know, don't make a big deal about it. Don't be like, "Shelly, stop. You know, that doesn't help anybody. That just adds more anxiety to the situation. What you want to do is just sort of break up that energy beam that's going between them. You know, it's kind of like if two guys are at a bar, you know, and they're doing the "you looking at me" thing, you know, across the bar. The constable is going to be like, "Hey, I'll just buy you both a beer. Let's just have a good time. We're all here to have a good time." Right. And that's really the energy that you have to have with these cats. So that's really sort of the key to fighting. If two cats are fighting, then they might feel competition for resources. And you just have to make sure that they have everything that they need so they're not in competition. And if you have to, go back and reintroduce them. You can actually separate the cats for a couple of weeks, you know, and they will get used to their own separate territories, and you can reintroduce them and start them over again. In fact, there are incidents of some clients that I've worked with who have taken their cats to the vet, and the cat comes home smelling different. And when the cat comes home smelling different, they're not recognized anymore, even with a sibling. There's no way you can convince that cat that that's their friend coming back. You know, you can't just tell them, no, it's them. Look, it's them. They don't recognize them visually. They're only going to recognize them by their smell. And so when they come back from the vet and they smell different, it could take days for them to sort of recover their natural odor. And you may have to separate them for a time. The next thing on my list is aggression towards humans. Now, a lot of people refer to that aggression as aggression. I just call it biting and scratching behavior. And the reason why is that biting and scratching behavior, if you call it aggression, you're assigning an attitude to it. You're giving the cat, you're telling the cat what the cat's motivation is. And in most cases that I've encountered where a cat is biting and scratching humans, in most cases that cat thinks they're playing. And we have a bit of an epidemic of cats that are hand-reared because they've been separated from their mothers or from their nest when they're babies. In a lot of cases, people will, you know, find a kitten by itself and they'll pick it up and think they're rescuing it, when in fact they're removing it from their family. And there are developmental hurdles that a cat needs to go through while they're in the nest that they learn only from the mother and the siblings. We can't teach it to them later. So if they get hand reared, like at a shelter where they're bottle fed, you know, they're probably not going to learn things like bite inhibition and scratch inhibition, that, you know, kind of just knowing how rough is too rough to play. In the nest, the siblings are real quick to tell them, you know, oh, that's too much. I'm going to let you know real quickly. And the mother will do that too. So, you know, the mother will generally speaking, will sort of hold them down by the head and just sort of gently keep them in place until they stop playing so rough. But we can't do that as humans, because unlike what you might think, they don't think of us as large cats, and they don't think of themselves as little humans. They know we are giant predators who can destroy them. And if we tried to teach them these lessons later in life, all it's going to do is make them afraid of us. It's not going to teach them anything. So once they've missed that developmental hurdle, then the only way to sort of teach them to stop biting and scratching is the way that you deal with any unwanted behavior. And I should just get into this here now while we're talking about this. Any kind of behavior that your cat that you don't want your cat to do. And we're not going to say that they're bad behaviors, okay? Because cats are cats and they behave like cats, and all of the behaviors that they indulge in are cat behaviors, right? They're not good or bad. We assign good or bad values to them sometimes. So it's important to consider them unwanted behaviors. So if we don't want them to do something like biting or scratching us, what we have to do is make that behavior a giant button that says boredom. Every time they indulge in that behavior, the result should be complete and total boredom. Because if you respond to a cat that's biting or scratching you by pushing them away, saying no, wrestling with them in some way, all you're doing is reinforcing the behavior. You are inadvertently making them behave that way even more often. So what you want to do is, if that cat bites or scratches you, get up and leave the room. You just get up and leave them there, let them sit there and sort of deal with the fact that now all the fun just stopped. And what am I going to do now? So they might come in the other room to look for you, right? If they come in the other room, leave the other room, leave them alone. You got to give them enough time to sort of come down off of that behavior. And then you want to encourage an alternative behavior. Okay. You want to positively reinforce a behavior that's incompatible with the unwanted behavior. So in the case of biting and scratching, you might want to have a cat go to a mat. So you can have like a placemat that you sit on the floor, and you can train your cat to go to the mat. I use clicker training, and I'm not going to get into clicker training techniques here today. We may do another webinar later on about clicker training, but I do have a video on my YouTube channel about clicker training if you're curious. But you can train a cat to go to a mat. Now, the cat goes to the mat, they can't be biting and scratching you because the mat isn't right next to you. You put the mat on the other side of the room. And then you positively reinforce every time the cat goes to the mat. And pretty soon, the cat has two options now. If they bite you, the result is boredom. If they go to the mat, they get praise and attention and treats. Now, which one would you choose if you were the cat? Pretty soon, you make the choice yourself. You don't have to force the cat to do what I want you to do. You basically convince them, oh, this is a better deal for you, right? Like, it's just a lot easier for them to choose that if you positively reinforce it. So that's how you deal with any unwanted behaviors. If they wake you up at night, if they crawl on your head in the bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, if they try to get you to feed them, if you get up one time, it's over, because you have reinforced this for quite some time. In fact, mammals all have what I refer to as a sporadic reinforcement, where if we get reinforcement from time to time, it will be heavily reinforced. That's why casinos exist, okay? If you see someone win, or if you win once in a blue moon, it will make you hungry for more. And they know that. The people that created gambling games know exactly what they're doing. And they hire a lot of psychology people to help them work that out. So it's very important that if a cat jumps on your head in the bed at night, you have to have a will of steel. You have to cover your head with the covers and pretend like it's not happening. And it's going to be several nights of horrible sleep for you. But if you can get through it, then, and give them another place to sleep, give them a new cat tree in the bedroom, or give them a folded fleece blanket and make a big deal about it, that this is a better place to sleep than on the bed. You can go sleep over here. Give them, positively reinforce an alternative, and you'll see results, I promise. I'm eating up time here, so I'm going to move on. The next category is excessive vocalizations. And we had a couple of questions about that, so I want to make sure I touch on this. In a lot of cases, cats who vocalize a lot, especially in the middle of the night, are senior cats. Senior cats can reach a point where they have sensory deprivation, where their hearing is going, and they don't know, they can feel that they're meowing, but they can't hear it, and it's confusing to them. So they'll just meow louder and louder and louder because they can't figure out what's going on. Something's wrong, and they don't understand what's happening. So that's something that you need to deal with a veterinarian. But you can also treat that as an unwanted behavior and positively reinforce them being quiet. That when they're quiet, they get praise and treats. If they're making noise, then you ignore them, and it results in boredom. If you, in the wild, cats generally don't meow to one another. They meow between mother and kittens, but not between cats, adult cats. And they learn to meow to us because we respond to it. So if we respond to it, we are positively reinforcing it. And now we've started a cycle where they're going to do it more and more and more. And if they do that at mealtime, and if you don't want them around mealtime, don't feed them when they're doing it. You have to wait for them to be quiet. And if it takes an hour, if you feed them an hour late, that's okay. Whatever you need to do to show them that they will not get what they want while they're rah, 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 then you can change that behavior. Destruction of property is the next item, and that's usually scratching furniture. That sort of thing can be dealt with in a similar fashion, although scratching has sort of three. I just did a video about how to pick a scratch pad. Scratching has three components. They're pulling the nail sheaths off when they scratch. They are scent marking their territory. And they're also, the sound of scratching tells other cats, this is mine, this is mine, this is my area. So those three things are really important. And in order to satisfy those three things, the scratching material has to be rough. It can't be soft like soft carpet. It has to be tall and stable, or flat, large and flat and stable enough for them to sit on. And it has to be in a space where they want to mark the territory. So if they're marking the arm of your sofa, then you need to put a scratching post, a really significant scratching post somewhere in that area, and positively reinforce them using that instead. There are aversives that people use sometimes. I don't recommend using aversives with cats at all. I just think it ends up making them feel bad. But I think that if you bring in a new scratching post, you can spray it with some catnip spray. Make sure it's very sturdy and tall, and cat needs to be able to stretch out completely and really claw, and it also needs to be just in the right area. So the other thing you can do sometimes, and believe me, I've done this, it feels a little silly, but you can scratch the scratching post yourself, because cats often learn through mimicry. They will watch other cats and they will scratch themselves, if you scratch first. And also that puts your scent on the scratching post as well. That helps them find it more attractive. The last thing that I have here is hiding cats who are, maybe under socialized. And this is a fairly complicated problem that requires a great deal of patience. I was just talking to a client last night about this, that they adopted a cat who came from an abusive situation. We don't know for sure if the cat was abused, but the woman who owned the cat had been physically abused by her husband. And so she was an abuse victim, and she had to give up her two cats as part of finding a home in hospice or something for her to move on with her life. And so these gentlemen rescued one of the cats, adopted him, and he was very frightened in their home. And so walking them through that, it's really just a very slow process of letting the cat have control over the situation, letting them determine how much time it takes for them to feel comfortable. And you have to do things like approach the cat from the side. You move in from the side as opposed to coming straight at them like this. You just walk in from the side, or you sit on the floor. One of the things I recommend doing is reading aloud to them, because it gets them used to hearing your voice in the room, because cats didn't evolve to live in a world with walls, and the walls put a certain amount of societal pressure on them, because the only tool that cats have in their toolbox for dealing with conflict is avoidance. It's the only thing they can do really, other than fight. If they get put in this crucible, in a home, they can't just move to another territory, and they can't scare you away into another territory. So now they're stuck there. And so you have to be really careful not to put too much pressure on them as you're working with them. You have to be nice and quiet and calm, and maybe do your work in the room there with the computer, read your emails aloud, play some soft music so that they get accustomed to what they're going to experience in your home every day. It can take a considerable amount of time, and you just really have to let them decide when they've had enough time to come out. And it can be really difficult for us humans in all of these cases that I'm describing. It can be really difficult because cats are what we refer to as latent learners. And that means that they are learning all the time. They are absorbing information all the time. They know more about you sometimes than you know about you. They know every detail of what you do, when you do it, and why you do it. They know when you're the least bit agitated. They know all these things because they're extremely observant, and they are paying attention and learning all the time. But cats don't feel the need to explain to us, yes, I've learned that. Yes, I get that. Okay, I got it. They are just going to be, I'm soaking it up. I'm learning it. And it can be discouraging to a lot of humans, because we want to push a button and have a red light come on. We push another button and a green light comes on. We want to see that response every time. And that can, it can thwart our progress with cats sometimes, because we can start to feel like what we're doing has been ineffective in some way. But I always encourage my clients, just keep going. I promise you, just keep going. Keep going down the road, keep hoeing the lane, because it will pay off. The cat is not a dog. The cat does not feel a need to placate you. Cats do not have appeasement gestures. They don't have the complex musculature in their faces to make complicated facial gestures. So they're just going to look at you and they're not going to give you any feedback at all. Just keep going, okay? And you'll see a difference. I mean, I promise, if you ask for their cooperation and you are gentle and kind to them, and you let them determine the pace at which you do these things, I think the world is your oyster. I think you can get them to do just about anything. The only thing that you may not, in the case of socialization, you may never get an under-socialized cat to accept humans sort of categorically, okay? Because they need to be exposed to a large variety of people at an early age. During early socialization, they need to meet men and women and tall people and fat people and skinny people and like all different types. And so in some shelter situations where under-socialized cats are isolated, that process can take place as long as it's caught early enough in their lives. But even for some cats later in their lives, it's possible to make headway in that regard. But in your home, I know, for example, when I was living in Los Angeles, I lived in a very small apartment for many years, and I didn't have a lot of people over all the time. And consequently, my cats are not super sociable. They were when I adopted them, but now they've kind of gotten used to just me being around them all the time. So friends come over and they kind of go hide, and that's okay. I make sure they have everything they need in their safe zone. And that's part of this too, is making sure that every cat has their own sort of safe zone. And if they go there when they're afraid, that you treat them as if they're invisible when they're there. You treat them as though you can't reach them. They've gone into an alternate dimension and they've just disappeared from sight. And that will help them to recharge a lot faster. Kind of deviating from my thing. I think that's everything on my list. So, Stephanie, how are we doing on time?
We're good.
Okay. So let me go down this list of questions, because a lot of these things I addressed already. But I wanted to address some of the unusual things. Like, a couple of people asked a question. Natasha and Rachel Larson both asked a question about a cat grabbing toys and holding them in their mouth and meowing. Just with the toy in their mouth, or carrying the toy around. That's fairly common with cats. I have to say, no one has ever been inside the mind of a cat. Okay. So all these kinds of things we hypothesize about, and we base it on observation of not only cats, but of other mammals, because it's all a continuum. It's all, subtle gradations. Like, for example, cats have the same sets of emotions that we have, just on a little bit simpler level. They're not quite as intertwined. And cats also don't spend a lot of time dwelling on things in the past or anticipating things in the future. They're in the moment, and the emotions are in the moment, and they let go of things. It may take them an hour or two, but they will let go of things if unfortunate incidents don't repeat themselves. They'll think of it as just a one-off and they'll forget about it eventually. But in the case of cats carrying their toys around and meowing, that really is, in my opinion, is just a case of them treating the toy as if it were offspring. Cats will often move their offspring around. They will relocate their kittens to a new nesting spot if they feel like that the previous nesting spot was not acceptable. And when they do that, sometimes they meow as they're walking around with the kittens, because they want the other kittens to know where they are and to be able to sort of locate them. And it's just the whole process. That's what it entails. So in most cases, I consider that to be just a case of them acting out because they don't have kittens, and they're just that instinct because the toy is about the right size, or it's a favored toy. In most cases, it's a toy that's a favorite. One of my cats has a toy that we call Cat Head. That's just a stuffed black cat face. And she moves it every night. Every night before bedtime, she meows and carries it around the house. And she has about 6 different locations where she takes it. And I've actually taken pictures of it at each location, because I wanted to start tracking how often she goes to each location. And she does a roundabout at each location. So it's very similar to the way cats will change sleeping locations. You know how they'll periodically suddenly move to another location in your home? That's because they want to stay safe from predators. Now, there aren't any predators in your home, but it doesn't change the fact that they still have that instinctual drive to relocate to another spot, because if you stay in the same sleeping spot every single night, it will accumulate more of your scent, and it will make you more vulnerable, because there will be one spot every night where you can be found. So by rotating among several different sleeping spots, it actually makes them safer. That's what we think anyway. Let me get on down this list. There was a woman, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, Sneha, who asked, how do we manage over grooming? Over grooming is very frequently related to one of two things. Either it's stress related, which we kind of talked about before, kind of addressing lowering your cat's stress level. Or it's related to internal medicine, like kidney problems or bladder problems. Cats will often overgroom an area in an effort to soothe pain. So they're feeling pain somewhere inside their abdomen. They might suddenly start overgrooming their belly. But it can also, there is one other aspect, and it's not directly related to stress, but it's in the same ballpark. They can also get bored and they can start overgrooming. So to treat them, I generally say visit the vet first. That's starting to sound familiar? Always visit the vet first, and show them where the cat's overgrooming, and they can do X-rays. I know this firsthand because one of my cats just was overgrooming last year, and it turned out to be a kidney infection. And I had seen no other signs of it, but she was overgrooming her abdomen, and I took her in and we did a urinalysis and blood work and found that she had a kidney infection. And it felt painful or in some way to her, so she was overgrooming her belly because of it. And it stopped as soon as we treated it. We put her on antibiotics and it was gone, and she stopped overgrooming. But for stress, it's a little bit more complicated, and for boredom, it can be a little bit more complicated. I did have a cat at one time who overgroomed because she was at home by herself all day. And all I did to solve it was I put on some soft music for her all day. And that was enough to change the environment. The environment changed. I put on cats, in my experience, like soft harp music, if you can believe that. And don't ask me how I came to that conclusion. I tried a lot of different music, and I just put harp music on repeat at home all day when I was gone, and she stopped overgrooming. And you can do the same sort of thing with cat videos on YouTube. Some of those are 8 or 10 hours long now, where they're loops or whatever, where you can have bird feeders and things like that. Or there are some with deer feeding and just outdoor scenes. If your cat doesn't have enough going on outside the window to entertain them during the day, you can leave a TV on during the day, and that can actually help to alleviate that. Let's see, is there anything else? I know we're about out of time. Dave Middleton asked, what kind of play with cats is best for bonding, exercise, and fun? And I will say that the best thing you can do is interactive play sessions where you're using a toy. Never use your hands or your feet as toys, because that's going to result in some bad behaviors down the road. But use a toy like prey. Playing really is just getting hunting activity out. The cat needs to hunt every day. And so they've got an instinctual drive. If you don't play with them every day, they're going to feel frustrated and thwarted, and they're going to find something else to hunt. They might hunt your blinds, or they might hunt your furniture. They might hunt pillows in the house. They might hunt you, or another cat. They're going to find something to hunt because that's what they do. That is what they were put here to do, So you have to play with them in a way that emulates the way prey moves. That's why motorized toys, battery operated toys, are not really a good idea, because they have a mechanical motion that becomes predictable. Even if it doesn't seem predictable to you, cats are very sophisticated at analyzing movement. And so that toy moving kind of looks like it's moving sporadically. They're like, yeah, that's not real. We know that's not real. We're not going after that. And so they really need people to interact with them and maybe drag the toy. It's important to drag toys around corners. That's very stimulating. Where did it go? That's what prey would do. It would go hide around a corner, or under a comforter, or under a piece of crinkly brown paper, or whatever you have. Just make sure that you emulate the hunt and give the cat something to hunt. My favorite toy My absolute favorite toy that I think I mentioned to almost every client is a toy called DeBird, spelled D-A-B-I-R-D. And DeBird looks like every other wand toy you've ever seen, but it's not. It's got feathers in sort of a shape like they're rigidly attached to one another, and then they're on the end of a string on the end of a wand. And it's about a 3-foot long string and about a 3-foot long wand. So as you wave this thing around, what happens is the feathers spin like a propeller, and they make this kind of sound as they spin through the air. And it's like, to a cat, it's like a bird is in the house and I've got to get it. And I've seen cats, lazy cats, leap 6 feet into the air to try to get this thing. Like, it is so super stimulating. And you don't want to leave it out because, you know, they could chew it up, and they do sell refills, extra little feather portions, because it will get destroyed over time. But it's by far the best toy that I've ever found. Now, you also asked, Dave, you asked about bonding, and I would say that the playtime does help to bond. At the end of playtime, though, you want to feed your cats a little snack. It can just be a treat, or it can be a mealtime, but it's important that they go through the process that they would go in the wild, which is to hunt, catch and kill. They've got to catch the toy. That's why we don't want to play with laser toys, okay? Because a laser toy is extremely frustrating because I can never catch it. You can play with the laser for a short time if you want to, but always substitute another toy before the end of the session so they get something they can sink their teeth into. I got it, right? So you want them to catch it, have that killing feeling, chew on it a little bit, eat something, get calories coming in. That completes the cycle, and then they're going to groom and they're going to crash. So if you want a cat to go to sleep at night, have a play session before bedtime, give them a portion of a meal, and they are going to groom and go to sleep. My cats go to sleep every night at the exact same time that I do, because we have a play session 30 minutes before bedtime, and it's only 5 or 10 minutes long, and then they get a meal, and then they crash. So I think we're out of time. Stephanie, what do you say?
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this for us and donating your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. I could talk about this for all day, every day. I kind of do. So I'm so happy everybody turned out. Thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate your attention, and I appreciate your willingness to hear some new ideas about how to make your cats' lives better.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.